It's been a while, we're back, we've got some new exciting stuff, not only for Overdress, but also for V Premium, so let's jump straight into these reveals and see what the future for Vanguard has in store for us on the horizon.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got another Tuesday livestream behind of us, but on top of the Tuesday livestream reveals, we also got some extra little tidbits from the last couple of days that we got revealed to us. So I'm gonna smack them all together in one video, so I have you all updated to all the know-hows, what's happening currently in the landscape of Vanguard reveals. So with that said, let's jump straight into these reveals, and we're gonna start off with new product information and then wrap it off with the new card reveals for Clan Collection. And with the new reveals, we saw the glimpse of what set 2, or should I say season 2 of Overdress is gonna bring to the game, because we saw the new sets of trial decks that are gonna start it all off, which are these new trial decks. Yes, this is a new trial deck for Stoichea, Dark States, as well as Kagero Sanctuary. And for some deceptive among us, you might see a very striking similarity with another very famous trio within the Vanguard game or Vanguard lore, and that's of course fray, because we see a female user using a Stoichea female character or unit, which is also covered in flowers, which essentially is Asha. We see a Dark States user using a dragon, which can to some extent be similar to Chrono Jet Dragon for Gear Chronicle. And then finally we see a key user for Kagero Sanctuary, which uses a knight, which can be seen as Altma. Now of course this isn't a perfect one-for-one similarity between these two trios, because yes, we got the new Nectar unit that looks very similar to Asha to some extent. I think this is the more believable one, but for Dark States, this doesn't look like Chrono Jet in any capacity. It looks more like a mix between a Pale Moon Dragon with Dark Irregulars, so something like that. And then for Kagero Sanctuary, it more looks like a Shadow Paladin card than an actual Warrior Paladin Altma unit. But an interesting similarity between the two, and there might be something here with maybe how their skills gonna interact or how they're gonna be used, but that's just pure speculation from this point. So for that, we only know the release date, which is going to be the 22nd of July. I think I have my month correctly. And other than that, I'm very excited for what these new right lines going to bring to the table, as well as what they're going to do for the respective nations, as this means more playstyles. But besides new trial decks, we also got the new cover art for set 6, and it's a doozy, because for set 6, we've got this artwork, which is, yes, a brand new Nirvana. Now, I am not really convinced this is going to be a brand new grade 4. I think this is going to be somewhat similar to what we've seen for Zorg and Orphist, where this is going to be a brand new grade 3. And this is very exciting, because that means we could take the Overdress deck in yet another direction, because we already had the grade 3 and the grade 4 that work very nicely together. You could still stick on the grade 3 with Persona riding and whatnot, or you could just go for the grade 4 ride. But now we also have this potential new Nirvana, which can shake everything up even more. Now, I can 100% say it's not going to be a grade 5. That's going to be ridiculous and probably will be unplayable. It could be a new grade 4, but my bet is on a brand new grade 3. But again, we don't know anything as of yet. This is all that we've seen. Of course, this set is gonna support the 5 great nations, excluding Lyrical Monasterio. So it's likely that we're gonna see a brand new version maybe of the other starters, which is Bruce, Bastion, Seraph Snow, as well as Magnolia, but we don't know. It's all pure speculation. Maybe Nirvana is gonna be the only one that's gonna new version, or maybe we're gonna see a couple of them excluding Bruce, because we don't see Dungy in a new season of Vanguard. That could be an option. It's just pure speculation. Now, what we do know are the new card reveals for the brand new V Clan Collection Volume 5 and Volume 6 sets. So let's dive into a new Kagero card and a new Shadow Paladin card. So first up, before we're gonna dive into these new cards, we did solve something very exciting for the new sets, because for V Clan Collection they already confirmed one type of reprint for every single clan, and it's none other than the brand new Hue Guardians. So yes, the new Hue Guardians for every single clan is going to be reprinted in this new V Clan Collection set. So interesting enough, these Hue Guardians are pretty new, but they work getting quite expensive for specific clans, so having yet another wave of support for these is very nice, because I think it's one of the most instrumental new cards introduced for not only V, but also Premium. So having yet another round of support, or at least release wave of these cards, is nice to at least lower the bar of entry for either formats, as well as getting your hands on these cards for a relatively cheap price. But besides those, we also saw 2 new Kagero reprint cards being confirmed, as well as a new Kagero card. And for those reprints for Kagero, we see none other than Break Breath Dragon, as well as Dragon Knight Hachette. And interesting enough, these are the 2 cards that were introduced in the very first original Premium Collection set. So it's an interesting choice that these cards are being reprinted. I'm not very familiar with Kagero if these cards were actually playable and if they were expensive, but these are 2 of the 4 new reprints for Kagero. And then of course one of the other 2 is the Hue Guardian. So there's 1 left reprint slot left for Kagero, which we don't know as of yet. Now, as for one of the new Kagero cards, we did know that the Rebirth is gonna be in this set, but the Rebirth wasn't the one that got revealed, because we got a surprise from left field, because one of the brand new Kagero cards in this set is Embodiment of Victory Aleph. Yes, it's the OG Superior Ride engine for Kagero, and I think one of the OG Superior Rides for Vanguard in general, which is Aleph. And Aleph is sticking true to its original nature, because the abilities of Aleph are Act from Hand if your Vanguard is Embodiment of Victory Aleph, or Embodiment of Shield Lam, which is the grade 2 vanilla card I believe. Cost, put an Embodiment of Armor Bar and an Embodiment of Spear Tar, each from your rearguard circle, into your soul, and write this card as stand. So if you have either the grade 3 or the grade 2 in your Vanguard circle, you put the grade 1 and the critical trigger into the soul to write this grade 3 from hand. What's interesting here is that this allows you to accelerate force markers, because this card has a force marker. So if you write this on turn 3, you get a force marker, use the skill, write another one from your hand, get another force marker, so you have 2. But if you're on grade 2, you can immediately right skip into grade 3, thus going from grade 1 immediately to grade 3, as long as you have the grade 2, the grade 1, and the grade 0, as well as this grade 3 in your hand, which can be nice. But it does force you to have a lot of very specific cards in your hand, because as already stated, you need the grade 0, critical trigger, you need the grade 1, you need the grade 2, and you need the grade 3 because you're right from hand, not from deck. So it's a little bit iffy, but it could allow you to immediately right skip to grade 3, and if you went first, your opponent's still at grade 1 while you're sitting on grade 3 with force markers and being able to just unload on your opponent. In Premium, this could be interesting with the prospect of striding on your opponent while they're still at like lower grades, which could be a nice thing, but I don't know if that's worth it in Kagero in the grand scheme of things. But it's an option they have, which now is probably a little bit better than the original ride line or superior ride engine of Aleph, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. Now, of course, that isn't the only thing that Aleph brings to the table, because Aleph is also a pressure card, because it has 2 other effects, from which one is Auto Vanguard Circle. When you're rearguard with Embodiment in its card name attacks, which is the grade 0, the grade 1, the grade 2, and the grade 3, increase or decrease the unit's power to match this unit until the end of battle. So essentially, you're not boosting your rearguards anymore, because keep in mind, when you're boosting it, you're going to override it with this effect. So you're just going to have an attacker, and those are going to be as strong as your Vanguard. Now keep in mind, force markers and whatnot all will stack, so you can basically get a buttload of power onto your rearguards if you stack the force markers on your Vanguard, as well as putting all the triggers on your Vanguard, and then immediately all the power is going to be transferred to those other units. So the critical trigger that's 4k can potentially smack for a lot of power, which means without dedicating a lot of cards from your hand, you can still put a significant amount of output, which then can compensate for the fact that you're minusing yourself with the superior right engine, because you lose 2 rearguards as well as a card from hand to get the card onto the Vanguard circle. So this could somewhat compensate for that lack of value. Now on top of that, we have another skill which synergizes with this particular skill, which is Act on Vanguard circle once a turn, costs Counterblast free, and this unit gets power plus 15k, critical plus 1, drive plus 1 until the end of turn. Then cost Soulblast 1 each of Embodiment of Armor Bar and Embodiment of Spear Tar, and counter charge free. So now we see the entire package here all together wrapped up neatly in this pretty interesting type of card, because essentially what the idea is that you superior ride, so you put the grid 1 and the grid 0 into the soul, so you can get the grid 3 on the Vanguard circle, which either is superior riding from a lower grade, or you get more force markers, thus stacking more power on the Vanguard. Then you use the act ability to counterblast 3, put more power on your Vanguard, get the critical because you're probably playing Force 1, so you have pressure on your Vanguard, get the extra drive checks, which means if you hit triggers, you can stack it on the Vanguard, thus empowering your Vanguards even more, and because you use the superior ride engine, you refund the counterblast, thus making the skill for free. And on top of that, because you empowered your Vanguard all the while you're doing this, you now empower your rearguards, because if you have the grid 1, the grid 2, the grid 3, or maybe the grid 2 on your rearguard circle, those will be significantly stronger, because not only will they have the 13k base of your Vanguard, the extra 10k powers of your force markers, but also the 15k power of the act ability, and potentially the extra critical powers of your triple drive that you're doing while attacking. So your rearguards will probably be like 38, 48, maybe somewhere in that ballpark while pressing your opponent, and that's honestly not terrible. But at the same time, I'm not saying that this is going to be the new meta defining for Kagero. It's probably more of a budget alternative, or like a fun strategy that you can play that can cheese a little bit, but probably is not the most consistent win condition. But that said, it looks to be like a very interesting, fun mechanic that you can play around with, and it gives Kagero a different playability than just Overlord restand smack face, or Blade Master board wipe, have multiple drive checking rearguards with your tokens. This is something completely different, which is more of a superior ride engine that tries to out-tempo your opponent while smacking with large numbers very early on, which can be very interesting. Besides Kagero, we also got a brand new Shadow Paneling card, and this time we got the cover card that we already knew, because we, out of nowhere, they revealed Revenger Dragruler Phantom, the evolution of Mordred Phantom. And interesting enough, in this iteration, it might not actually be an evolution of Mordred Phantom directly, but more of a side grade of Mordred Phantom, because it's very similar, yet so different. Because Dragruler has the effect, although when a unit is placed on the Vanguard circle by riding from a unit with the Revenger in its card name during the ride phase, search your deck for up to one card with the Revenger in its card name, call to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. If your opponent's damage zone has 4 or less cards, cost, soul this 1 Illusionary Revenger Mordred Phantom, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards and deal it 1 damage. So, interesting enough, this skill doesn't specify that you need to ride on top of a grade 3 Revenger. So if you ride on top of a grade 2, you still get the free search from your deck. If you ride on top of Illusionary Revenger, you still get the free search. If you ride this on top of, let's say, a Raging Form, you still get the free search. So there is some synergy with the Revenger archetype, as well as just its own build, because you can just play it without Mordred, or you can synergize it with riding it from a Mordred turn, and then get that extra free plus as well. And then if you ride on top of Mordred, you can potentially deal your opponent a damage, so go shooting them from 4 to 5 potentially, which can put them into a very deadly situation. In premium sense, it's funny that you can actually accelerate this a little bit, because in premium you have D in the main, and D in the main allows you to put a card from your hand into the soul in the early game, so you could essentially put the Mordred Phantom into your soul on turn 2 while you're sitting on the Revenger grid 2, then ride into this grid 3, and then get the free plus, but also being able to shoot a damage because you can soul blast the Mordred Phantom. So that's an interesting synergy within premium. Now, of course, that 3 plus isn't the only advantage of engine or advantage effect of Dragruler, because Dragruler also has a very powerful effect, which makes it a very powerful finisher slash a generically good Vanguard to be on. Because its second effect is on a Vanguard circle, when this unit attacks, cost Counterblast 1 and Soulblast 1, choose all of your front row Blaster Dark or units with Revenger in its card names and retire all of your other rearguards. All of your front row units get power plus 5k until the end of turn for each unit retired. If you retire 2 or more, stand all of your front row rearguards. So essentially, this is a Mordred Phantom that's a little bit more costly, but also a bit more generic. Because Mordred Phantom can only restand Blaster Darks, but it only costs a counterblast, and it doesn't retire units, so it's a bit more sustainable. But in this case, you aren't necessarily reliable on having 2 Blaster Darks. You can have 1 Blaster Dark, or a random Revenger unit, or just no Blaster Darks and only random Revenger units, which allows this card to be a bit more consistent in dealing 5 attacks, which can be very good if you want to go for a finishing play. And at the same time, unlike Mordred Phantom, this effect doesn't require your opponent to be at grade 3. So if you go first, you can go into this thing and still deal out 5 attacks. And interesting enough, because the retire aspect of the skill doesn't look at the names of the units, you can synergize Vina main with this card, because now you can use the plus engine of the main, get units in the back row, and then forcefully retire those units to re-stand your front row without losing the advantage of retiring your own units, which is nice to compensate for the minuses, which wasn't useful in Raging Form, because Raging Form specifically needs Revenger units. In this case, you can actually combine the main with this, which was also a piece within the original Mordred Phantom build. So this is a nice addition that still synergizes with the way how the deck was built. So now you have an option of potentially going first, going into this thing, have the 5 attacks, or you can go into the normal Mordred Phantom, because also keep in mind, the normal Mordred Phantom is actually potentially a more powerful output, because that can accelerate force markers by just calling Blaster Darks. So if you're in a situation where you have access to your Blaster Darks and you have access to your Masquerades, which allows you to recall those Blaster Darks, maybe going into a Mordred Phantom that cannot multi-attack but is able to create a lot of force markers, so you can make your finishing play a bit more secured. And then potentially after that, you can go into this, because if your opponent is at 4 damage, you can shoot them at damage, force them to be at 5, and now every single one of those 5 attacks can be lethal, and thanks to the extra type of force markers you create with Mordred, now those numbers are going to be significantly bigger, and they have to deal with big numbers that can all be lethal. So while on paper this card looks to be like a different version of Mordred, it is actually a very nice synergy card with the Mordred Phantom build, because this card can basically compensate for the weaknesses of the deck, because if you go first but you don't have your Blaster Darks, then your grade 3 turn is not really gonna do them as much. Now this card comes into play, and now you have a different option. Or let's say, for example, your opponent was able to stay on low damage, then potentially the Mordred Phantom play isn't really that deadly. Thanks to this ability to shoot at damage, now you have a new grade 3 to go into, which allows you to still put you into that secure win position. So this is a very nice card that can nicely complement the original Mordred Phantom build, but because it isn't necessarily dependent on Mordred Phantom, it can potentially be its own deck with just pure Revenger support that maybe mixes in some Blaster Dark synergies, or maybe even Raging Form for that matter. So overall, a very interesting Vanguard that has a lot of potential, and I'm very curious of how this can interact with whatever Shadow Paladin has access to, because there might be a way that you could potentially synergize with Raging Form, that you first attack with Raging Form, you ride in this thing, and maybe be able to reset your front rows, but I don't know if there's a possibility to create 2 extra units in the back row, so you can sacrifice those to reset your front row. But there might be something there. I'm not 100% too familiar with the Revenger support, but who knows what the possibilities are. It's yet another key piece to the engine, and that means more options. And with that said, this also is everything that I wanted to discuss today. Overall, a lot of exciting stuff. We see the future prospect of Overdress, as well as the first reveals of the clan collection, which gives us a glimpse of what this new clan collection is going to bring to the table. So overall, very exciting stuff, and I'm also very curious on what you guys think, so let me know in the comments section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/FrayTheInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/FrayTheInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!